few comments about this afterwards. This degree, we are getting incredible interest on this degree from foreign governments, from people that want to have this in their city, and we've trademarked the name MBC. We would like to use this as a brand builder for us. We're fond of saying right now, in 1917, Harvard started the MBA. In 2019, the David Eccles School of Business started the MBC. And we hope that, 100 years from now, that's what people will be saying. We're not sure that's the case, but we would like to talk a little bit about how we might be able to expand that. So Troy, I want you to kind of dive into what we've learned in the year one. We're now in year two, and then we'll open it up for a few questions.
Great, thanks, Taylor. Thanks everybody for being here this afternoon. As you remember, a couple of years ago, we came to the board and proposed creating this new master's program. The idea was we saw that an MBA really wasn't suited for an entrepreneur that's deep into evolving and growing a company, and that we saw that we're graduating a number of students out of our undergraduate programs with great ideas. We had entrepreneurs coming to us with their ideas and looking for something that combined a business accelerator with an academic rigor and some learning around creating a new business. So we launched the Masters of Business Creation degree. Got to thank Jack Britton and Todd Zanger on the faculty for helping us redo the curriculum entirely, get the faculty on board for teaching a new way, to really rethinking this and getting us launched and getting us approved through the university system to get a new master's program. So Chris, if you'll advance at the slide. So this was our first cohort. We had over 100 people apply to the first cohort. We took in 26 founders. So we admit teams of founders for companies, 20 companies in total. As you can see, it's a pretty diverse group. We think one of the unique things that we have is really supporting female-led companies and providing great support there. They ranged all over from medical devices to product companies to software as a service. About 10 of the companies had revenue when they came into us. We had a number of them achieve their first dollar of revenue while they were with us. We had 3 companies, 2 companies get 6-figure of investment, and another 3 companies get 5-figure of investments. So great success in the first year. We had one really successful company that's doing well that got crushed by COVID, which was sad to see, but saw that entrepreneur kind of rebound and pivot and do some additional things. And if you'll advance to the next slide, Chris. So this is where we were. We had a big group. So there's a lot of kind of a combination of in-class learning. We were taking concepts, but the important thing is you take a concept you learn around building your sales pipeline, developing your marketing plan, how to create a financial model and read financial statements, and then immediately applying them to your company. Each company is assigned a coach that meets with them weekly. We don't have traditional assignments. What you do is have to complete a due diligence checklist that you would see from a venture capitalist. That's your deliverables for the semester. And then our exams are oral exams. Essentially, we do 2 board meetings during the semester, one in the mid-semester, one in the end of the semester, where you have to present to us as the faculty members, as you would to a board, what you accomplished during the semester, what your goals are. We kind of joke with them that we're deciding whether we're going to keep them on as the CEOs of the companies or not. And so we do it in a very different way of teaching and grading. And if you'll flip to the next slide, I want to just highlight one of the companies that had huge success. So Doxime has actually got a long history with the Lausanne Entrepreneur Institute and the David Eccles School of Business. They came through our technology commercialization, was a PhD student in bioinformatics that approached me with this telemedicine platform idea. This is research thesis. We analyzed the business and launched it with him. He entered it into our business model competitions and won some money, and we spun him out of the university. And frankly, the business kind of floundered for a couple of years. They were kind of stalled. They came to us and entered the MBC program. They were doing about $30,000 a month in revenue. They had several thousand users. Most of them were free. They couldn't figure out what their costs were. They didn't know how to convert their free customers to paying customers. So we worked on some of those things with them and started getting some traction. They also had a partner that was in the business that was very problematic that they wanted to buy out. And we actually used that negotiation, buying out a partner, as our negotiations class for entrepreneurs, use that as a real-time case study of how to negotiate a bad partner out of it. And they bought that partner out. We got them to about $70,000 a month in revenue. They had about $30,000 a month in revenue in August. By January, we got them to about $70,000 a month in revenue. And then COVID hit. And in March, excuse me, they went from about 50,000 customers in January to over 275,000 customers and 6 million patient visits and over $5 million in revenue. And we had kind of positioned them ready for that growth. They've done really well, continued to grow beyond that since they've graduated from the program and left us. And the really cool thing is they came back and made a significant donation to us to support other MBC teams and really paying it back. And that's really been the vision. One thing about the MBC program that's unique is we scholarship the program completely. So we don't take any resources out of the companies. We require all the founders to be full-time working on their business. And so we want to be aligned with them. We don't take any equity stake. We don't charge them a loan or anything to do that. So really on the side to successful companies, and had a great first year. We learned a lot about it and changed some of the curriculum, changed some of the timing, and also changed the type of company we thought were well suited for this. So Chris, if you can flip to the next one. So we were recognized last year by our the entity that accredits business schools across the world as the most, one of the innovations of the year that inspire change in business school curriculum. So great recognition for doing something different. And we always like to be out there leading and setting the pace for other business school programs out there. So Chris, if you'll flip to the next slide. This is this year's cohort. So you can see social distancing in the classroom real time, everybody in masks. So we had to have a smaller cohort this year. So this year we've got 19 founders, 16 companies. Again, 7 of those 16 companies are female led. About 7 of them have revenue to date. We just had 1 company launched and we'll talk about that. So that's what the cohort looks like this year. And if you look at the next slide, Chris. This is one of our companies in here. Great story. Young woman who worked and put her husband through medical school. And then now that he's in medical school and has his practice established, she said, I'm going to take my turn and you're going to support me while I start my company. So she's full-time working on this. It's a really interesting cosmetic company using a oil that comes out of trees out of South Asia. She just had her launch of her website was yesterday, so we're helping her there. So we had to get her kind of product launch, brand positioning, what her unit economics were, shipping, distribution. So we've done a lot in a couple of weeks, and we're now working with her to see how we can use data analytics and things to scale up her sales and marketing. So if you'll flip to the next slide, Chris. So great news, as Taylor mentioned, we're getting great rankings across. The U.S. News and World Report ranking came out just last week. You can see the kind of company we're in. We're number 6 in public schools. Those are the ones with the asterisks on it, but also kind of the mix with some very prestigious private schools. You notice there's the private school down south is not in there, so we're always nice to be ranked above BYU. And then, Chris, if you'll flip the next one, it's not just that ranking. We're continuing to get great rankings from all of the main ranking bodies out there, and you can see the bottom one that's asterisk Princeton Review. That's last year's ranking. The new ranking will be out in November, and we'll move up a couple notches in that. We're excited to see that. So we continue to move forward and do some things. And now we're looking at kind of where we go next. We've had a lot of interest in this degree program, and can we expand it and extend it to maybe developing countries and help entrepreneurs in developing countries and some other iterations on it. So that's my overview. So Taylor, I'll let you take it. Anything you want to add from there?
Let's open it up for some questions. I think Anne posted one in the chat. What are the biggest things you changed or will be changing kind of in the program, Troy?
Yeah, so last year we were in startup mode too, and we were learning a lot. We got a late approval, and so we had to jump on things. And so the biggest 2 things that we changed, Anne, were 1, we changed the order of the curriculum we were delivering. So we really pulled the focusing on what your revenue model is and what your financial projections, and right at the very beginning, really into the first week of the program, we realized going into that we had companies in there. I mentioned DoxyMe was doing about $30,000 a month in revenue. They really had no idea what the revenue model was. They kind of stumbled into revenue. We had a number of teams that had no revenue and had no concept of what even thinking about a revenue model. They're really product focused, and we had to get them thinking about the business as an entity and how does it generate revenue, and more importantly, how does it make money. So we pulled the financial curriculum up earlier into the semester. The second thing was we narrowed the kind of range of companies, the maturity level of companies. In the first year, we admitted a couple of companies that were still trying to work on their product and really hadn't got their product dialed in, and they were kind of left behind by the companies that had revenue and were focusing on product launches and generating the first dollar revenue. Some had technical issues. They couldn't get their product finished. Some of them didn't know exactly where their target customer was. So they just got left behind. And so we've narrowed the range of businesses and kind of maturity level. They have to have a really formulated product completely finished and ready, an MVP ready to launch. We're okay if they have revenue. Like I said, about 10 of the companies this year have revenue already. So narrowed that. So those are the two big changes.
Thanks. Mark actually asks a good discussion question, and that is, how can we help drive messaging and branding to the MBC program?
Yeah, I think, Mark, thank you. We'd love to do that. We'll give you some talking points. Just talk about it. If you find some interesting companies out there, refer them to us and have them come and talk to us, or people that could add value to our program, have them come in. We bring in a lot of experts in, and we like to coach the diversity of the companies this year. We've got 3 in ed tech. We've got 4 that are software as a service. We've got 4 consumer products. So we're always needing to connect and network with people, Mark. We don't have any medical devices in this year. We did last year. So just helping us connect and talk about it. And then just the uniqueness of this program that we're, it's kind of to Taylor as an innovative dean, and the business school is an innovative place to teach education. Just talk us up. We're happy to do that. And anytime, I'm happy to come and talk with any about it any time, and Zoom makes it a lot easier. So happy to talk about anybody you might have.
Yeah. Jill, good question. The business is, you have to show up to the program with a business idea. So this is not a come to the program and figure out an idea. You're admitted based on your idea. And most people, as Troy said, a lot of them do have a little bit of revenue and are at least thinking about how to get going. So that's actually, I think, one of the things we're really trying to dial in is where in that space does this degree actually, give the most emphasis, or most help.
Yeah, and I think we learned a lot about that in the first year. We branded it, specifically named it Business Creation rather than Masters of Entrepreneurship, because it's not about ideation or learning the entrepreneurial mindset. It's, you've got a product, you finish that product, and now you need to build a business. I need to sell it. I need to build a sales pipeline. I need to distribute it. I need to manufacture it. All of those things, and understanding that from a financial perspective, as well as a branding and marketing perspective. And so again, as Taylor said, we need to have somebody with a really formed idea, really formed product, an MVP that's either already started sales or ready to launch. If you're still trying to figure out the product or the market fit, then you're probably going to get left behind in this program, not the right fit for us.
So now let me pose a question. We've got many entrepreneurs on this call. So, how portable is this degree? And we think, we're trying to kind of figure out what it costs and what we can do one cohort for. We think that number is probably somewhere around $300,000 in actually a pretty deluxe way of doing it. So our philosophy has been not to charge entrepreneurs, but to go, find a sponsor for this. We think we're not quite sure how high it can scale. We decided not to try the scaling question this year because of COVID, but I would guess, Troy, I don't know, we think we'd probably do 30 individuals. Maybe you can push 50. We're not sure it can go much higher than that. But let me just tell you who I've had, inquiries from. This morning we had an alum who runs the world's largest fertilizer manufacturer, and he's doing work in Africa with agricultural entrepreneurs. They're interested in sponsoring us to take those entrepreneurs that they find and put them through the program. We've got the city of Birmingham, Alabama, that wants to use it as a development tool, start businesses in impoverished places. We've had ideas that say, why don't you take this and have VCs sponsor a cohort in a particular area, like information or in computer cybersecurity. So there's a variety of ways we could take this. I think, ultimately what we want this to be is part of who we are and our brand, but also that they know we started it. So that's not really a great question. I'd just love to hear comments on those thoughts from those of you that are great entrepreneurs. Nicole, Barbara, Jill, Paige, you certainly are in a startup. Amy, I guess now that you're back, we could point you out. You've done a little bit of this in your career.
I wasn't gone, I was listening.
Yeah. So thoughts? I've caught you all after lunch.
Is the question, Taylor, on the scale or the questions on?
How would you take advantage of this program to scale it, kind of make it, who we are?
I mean, from my perspective, I think one of the things right now is we're going to see entrepreneurship climbing because of the fact that the COVID, so many people are starting, the layoffs are starting to happen now, right? You're starting to see major companies. I mean, Disney just announced all their people are laying off everywhere. And when people are looking for new jobs, they're going to scramble toward entrepreneurship a little bit, I think. I mean, like as a interim solution, if not the long-term solution, just because of, the change that they're forced into right now. And I think that does give you a little bit of an opportunity here. The struggle is what you alluded to. It's kind of like with this new situation, will people inherently see the same value in it right now? Or are they, because they're out of work and they're struggling on the financial front? What have you seen on that front?
Well, the nice thing, I think we did have lower applications to this year. We had 80.
Yeah, we did, but we didn't advertise as heavily either, Taylor, because we knew we were going to have a smaller cohort. So we really kind of throttled back on that. We had so many last year, we didn't even do a good job of reviewing them. So we didn't want to overwhelm ourselves this year again.
Yeah.
Do the people that didn't get to come in for this last year, do they get to potentially, are they considered like pipeline of who we might bring in for other cohorts or no?
Yeah, absolutely, Amy. So 2 of the companies that we have in this year, we applied last year and we said, you're too mature, continue to work. You're too immature, continue to work on your idea. And so they've come in. And so we actually we see that as a benefit. We keep in touch with those that applied and didn't get in. And just to tell you the application process, they apply to the graduate school. They have to have a 3.0 GPA undergraduate degree. We don't require anybody to take a GRE or GMAT test. But then they submit their business idea to us, and there's a form they fill out. They have to, it's almost like an application to a seed fund. And we review their businesses, and, we basically look at see if they're in the right phase, and then we interview them. And so we do keep in touch with those. So we're already building the pipeline. We've got 3 or 4 companies that I think will come back to us for next year that'll be in the right spot. I just talked to another business today that they're like, did we miss the window? Could we come in January? Admit it's like, no. So I don't think we're having any issue. The scale problem becomes, or the scale issue becomes, is we try and take, and this is, I think, where both our opportunity and our scale issue is, we've got some classes that have high-level concepts that are applicable across startup companies. And then what we have to have is a coach that can translate it to the specific application of that business. And, if you were going to do it in Africa, you'd need to have a set of people that know the ecosystem in Africa to take the high-level concepts and then translate it to be applicable on the ground, if you will. But I think we have some opportunity there to do that. I think we can find those people. I think we're learning enough about it that we can say, here's the high-level concepts. We can teach those from faculty here at the business school in the US, and some of that even remotely maybe or asynchronously taped, but then also help them take the concepts and apply it to the specific companies, whether it be in Africa or Birmingham, Alabama. So I think there's some things we're learning about the way to scale it. But it's a lot of it's brute force. You need, individual coaches that can help do that translation for those entrepreneurs.
What's the scale you want to get to? Sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt someone. Sorry. I just was wondering, what's the scale you're trying to achieve?
I don't think we've even pondered that question much, to be honest. We're just trying to see if we can do it twice right now.
Okay.
So, Taylor,
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I
You just muted.
somebody, the host muted me, sorry. One thing that I think is interesting, first of all, I'm really happy this has taken off. I think it's such a great idea. And one idea I was thinking too, actually, one is like if you fed from some of the, like the entrepreneur, the innovation kinds of, programs, like like I know I took that at the University of Texas. Really small ideas came out of that. So if you were thinking about it, you could like get some ideas that, you know, then like the winners of those programs around the country could then feed into potentially, you know, taking that to the next step. That was one idea I was thinking of. The other one is I think there's something in the VC community that would be really compelling, because if you think about some of the best VCs, they usually they have like specific skills in an industry. So it sounds like, Troy, you had these ideas around an industry. They have expertise as well, and they may be looking at companies that, you know, they're too small for a VC, but they would be perfect to put into a more of a feeding kind of thing like this. Just two ideas I thought of.
John, you're our resident VC here. What do you think about that idea? John Dunn? Oh, he's not on.
Yeah, I don't see him.
Okay, he left. Sorry.
I got
Barbara.
a thought about that on those same lines, because you know, if you partner with some of these VC people, there's always people that are left out. You know, they're left lagging. They're just they don't quite have the product to there. They don't know what the hell they're doing, so they can use this program. And so I'm wondering if, you know, people in the VC world like Greg Warnock, for instance, can really give you some good input on what businesses they're just leaving off that would be good to tail into this. And not only that, but what businesses to target for this kind of a program.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
I have a chicken egg question, which is if you're looking at sponsors to fund the program, whether it's VC groups or what have you, do you maybe need to have two tracks? Because the people who apply for this program as is already have a business idea, have a business going, have a product, have a service or whatever. If you're talking about having some, you know, fintech specific thing and a VC group is going to fund that, then do you have the idea first? Do you have the business first? Or do you create the business because you now have the money for it? Does that make sense? So I kind of wonder, because most people that are in this program, they're entrepreneurs because they have a passion for the product or the service or the idea. And is it backwards thinking about it if you're getting funding, you know, specifically for a specific cause, you know, or a specific area, whether it's fintech or ed tech or whatever it is, whatever the business that they're looking for, does it reverse or does it negate the innovation of and the passion of the entrepreneur themselves? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's actually interesting. You'd have to think through that pretty carefully, right? So you'd have to have a big enough pool of people looking at a specific area if you're going to go the other way, for sure.
And there are some programs I looked at. Techstars does some very specific, industry specific, like they have one that Verizon sponsors. There's a fintech one that Barclays sponsors, and they do them over the US and Europe. And where that innovation side comes in, and they're big and they're expensive. They need big corporate sponsorship like that, Nicole. So there's some out there that we wanted to say the gap is I'm past that stage, and now I want to really focus on. I've got this really great idea. I've finished my product, but I don't know how to sell the thing, right? I mean, that's where we saw the failure point is so many of our companies, student companies that come through our program, great ideas, great innovations, got the product finished, have an MVP, and they launch and they fail. And they don't know how to sell something. I mean, one of the things we do is all of the founder CEO, they have to be the chief salesperson. If they can't sell it, they're going to never teach anybody else how to sell the product. So we make them they have to do, in our board meetings next week, the first thing they have to do is sell us the product as the board. So, you know, we're focusing on that kind of niche on that where you're a little more mature, but where we've seen the biggest failure points is they don't know how to create the business around the product.
Yeah.
Hey, Taylor, just one comment on your brand idea, because I think this is something where we want to use it to extend the brand. It'll get to some other questions about the value proposition of Eccles. And I just think it's important to continue to claim the space of being first, even if it's as simple as every time we market the program, we say the first MBC program in the country. So that
Interesting idea.
tagline or whatever
Good
the right whatever the right tagline is, it just carries with it every time, even, you know, whether that's in the city of Birmingham or any place else.
Yeah, I like that. Well, thank you for your ideas. We're going to move to our second topic, the Collard Initiative on Technology. And just to remind people what this is, Heather Collard, who is on our board, not on the call today, has sponsored and funded a dorm that is has the audacious goal of making our freshman class the most digitally literate group of students in the country. And Curtis Morley is on, and he's the executive director, that he's tasked with kind of making this all happen. I think in the last spring, we had a pilot going on in product development, but it's matured much since then, and we wanted to have him give a big update. By the way, we view this as not only digital literacy, but also it's a very entrepreneurial program. And so many of the ideas our students have need to be transferred into apps or software. And so we send, once they have the idea, we send them to Curtis to start learning what they need to learn to start the companies. So Curtis, why don't you take a minute and update us on where we are?
Thanks, Taylor. So we have, come quite a long way since we last met. And here's a little infographic that kind of gives a full display of the advancements. Since we first started, we've had 157 students be accepted into the program. And we now have an officially recognized group called the Collard Scholars. So everyone within the Collard Initiative on Technology is now a Collard Scholar, which that provides a simplified enrollment process and makes leadership roles available. Of the 157, I'm happy to report that we are now up to 40% male and 60% male. So this is one of the big pushes, is to get more women into tech, and we're well on our way there. We're also working with 3 schools to make this happen. We've got the business school, of course, that's where the program is housed. And we have classes within the IS department as well as marketing. We also have the computer science department and the design and architecture department also providing classes for us. And this one is huge. So grateful for especially Kurt Doman and others that have donated. To date, we've been able to scholarship all of the Collard Scholars. So this is a big thing, and the program is really, it's really amazing for the students because they're getting the highest level of education. If we move on to that last box in the middle column, one of the reasons that they're getting the highest level is because we're working with Kimberly Johnston, who's on the board, and Ernst & Young, to provide classes like the blockchain class that we're working with. We literally have 2 instructors from Ernst & Young. So this is one of the blessings of COVID, is that all of our courses are online now. So we have, in the KIT program, there's 0 courses live. Everything's online. And one of those courses is with Ernst & Young, and literally the inventors of some of the blockchain and Bitcoin technologies are teaching the class. So it's kind of like taking physics from Einstein or Impressionism from Monet. It's literally the people that are creating the technology are teaching our students. There's no way to get more bleeding edge than what we're doing with these classes. And our objective is to make it interdisciplinary. And so we've broken it down with degrees. The largest number of students come from the IS department, then the business school. We have the computer science department with 15, marketing, finance, games, biomedical engineering, entrepreneurship, graphic design. There's a much larger list than what's able to be shown here. Everybody from sports medicine to communications, you name it. And finally, one big thing that's happened that we're very excited about is the digital literacy program. So we now have a certificate that's tied to the program. So when students graduate, they're going to graduate with a digital literacy certificate added onto their degree. which is going to give them a huge bonus as they go into the work field and apply for jobs. So someone with a communications degree will have a communications plus digital literacy, so that the companies hiring them will know that they understand the latest and greatest technology. And just as a reminder, some of those courses are digital marketing, augmented reality, blockchain, which is the foundation for Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, machine learning, security, cybersecurity, etc. And so all of this has come about since we've last met, and we're really excited about the program. We actually have one student who is this semester will finish the 21 credits and will get the certificate added to their degree. So, oh, and one other thing, sorry, real quick, is the towers have opened. So in spite of COVID, the towers are open. We have, out of the 1,000 beds in the building, I believe we're right around the 700 mark just because of the COVID restrictions. So we're full as far as the COVID restrictions are concerned. We still have several rooms once COVID is done, hopefully soon. So
Curtis, before we take some questions, I've got another story for you today, and this has to do with Matt Eyring's comment. I was at lunch with a father whose son this summer took our sales emphasis and then did the Collard Initiative on Technology because he wanted to get into tech sales. And yesterday he was offered a sales position as a junior at Divvy, one of our big startups. He said last night he came to his father, he says, "Dad, they're giving me a credit card. Dad, they asked for my t-shirt size. Dad, they're giving me a coat." He says, "Welcome to the world of overly well-funded startups." And so he's pretty excited.
That's awesome.
Anyway, Matt, to your point, we agree. We actually just hired the director of the sales program away from BYU this year. So she is up and running, and we have, I believe, 60 to 70 students that are in our sales emphasis.
Awesome.
If I can just make a quick comment, you'll notice that sometimes people say you've got so many small little programs going. I think it's they're not small, they're actually large, but we do have a lot of programs going. I think it's somewhat indicative of a bit of a strategy, and that is that, students increasingly, they don't want to pick classes per se, but they want to pick skill sets that they're involved in, right? So take the example of the student that I had lunch with their parent today, and that is wanted to be in sales and particularly wanted to be in tech sales. So they were able to take a set of classes in the Collard Technology Initiative and then 3 to 4 classes in our sales emphasis. And they have now crafted a pretty amazing, starting job. Similarly, if you take entrepreneurship, someone may have an idea, they need to learn some tech. They may also need to learn some sales, right? And so what we're trying to do is put logical blocks together rather than have them try to weave their way through classes. And you're starting to see a bit of this. The other thing I would emphasize is, like Lassonde, the Collard Towers is an experiential learning community, right? Where you are taking those classes in that building and you are actually working on projects. Well, in the non-COVID world, you'll actually be working on projects at night in that building related to technology. So it's again, we're trying to differentiate in a very clear, purposeful way here. So any comments on that or questions for Curtis? He's doing a great job, by the way. Okay, next slide. And I don't see Abby Ivory, so I'm going to take a little bit of her part. She is launching a program today, so I'm going to excuse her. So as many of you have been dealing with in your companies, the death of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, I think, has created kind of a seismic shift in the way our society is thinking about race. We were fortunate enough last fall to have started a partnership with Howard University, which is kind of the best and best known traditionally Black college. And I have met several times with their with their president. We're also fortunate that he lives right next to David Marriott, who is an alum of our school, and David's been very instrumental in this relationship. And so the basic idea was that, you know, we do well on some dimensions of diversity, but certainly if you look at the Black population in Utah, it's like 1.6%. And that, you know, becomes a struggle to recruit students. And this is kind of a unique partnership. And it was actually started with the tech industry here. So Aaron Sconard of Pluralsight came to us and said, you know, we've got to go recruit students. The problem is when you recruit people one at a time, it's hard to retain them, especially at lower levels. And so the hypothesis was if we could put together a consortia of companies, and maybe you'll switch to the next page now, if we could put together a consortia of companies and go back and recruit together. And the idea was we'll recruit for interns. The University of Utah will house them in Lassonde Studios. The Howard University president has issues with degree completion, and so he wants them to take a class or two while they're doing their internship in Utah. And so we will have their faculty coming out to teach classes to both our students and their students. And then our offer, where we're trying to get our win, is that as part of a retention package, as our tech companies start to hire these individuals, we will offer 50% scholarships to graduate programs. And so this was piloted last year, and Pluralsight brought in 5, and then I'm committed every year to hire 2 to 3 interns to help manage the program. So we had our interns here all summer, and they actually designed all the marketing that you're seeing. And they're going to be the ones that will be selling this to Howard students this year. And anyway, so next summer, these companies that you see here have signed up to kind of jump on. And we will have approximately, I guess, capacity for 50 interns in Lassonde. And we hope that, you know, that will help kind of diversify our industry, but also diversify our graduate student base. One of the groups that jumped on very quickly was the Sorensen Impact Center, which is here on our campus, and they've already hired students. I want to welcome Jeff Davis, who is the new CEO of the Sorensen Impact Center, to talk a little bit about how that is going. And also, he's going to just describe some of the new ventures that are going on in his center with respect to diversity and inclusion, as his center, Sorensen Impact, has been heavily involved in trying to measure the inequities coming out of both COVID, but also overall in society and in general. So Jeff comes to us from the Cicero Group and managing their impact practice, and also a long string of, I believe you were with Unitas at one point as well. Is that right? So yep. An early pioneer in impact investing. So Jeff, go ahead.
Thanks. It's great to be here. I'm coming up on my 3-month mark, so still have my feet wet at the university community here, and it's just been amazing, the welcome that I've received. So I'm grateful for that, and I'm really grateful for all of your service. Taylor's told me what an important role you play in the David Eccles School and helping guide us along, so I appreciate that. Taylor asked me to talk a little bit, if we can go back one slide for a moment, talk a little bit about what we're doing with Howard University, and then I'll talk about a new initiative, and then a third one that's not explicitly diversity related, but heavy undertones. So the first is we've hired 4 Howard interns with us right now. In fact, I guess don't tell anybody, I'm up on campus. I just had lunch with one of them who happened to be here on a road trip. So I jumped into the office here right afterwards, and they're fantastic. They are really, really top-notch students. We're really excited, and they're adding a lot of value, and they're really helping improve our perspectives, as you would hope, on a variety of projects. We have 4 students, and we anticipate having 4 students for the foreseeable future, which is great. And we also hope and anticipate helping Howard set up a social impact center. They just received a very large grant to do just that as part of a very wealthy individual's racial justice and equity initiatives, Jeff Bezos' wife. And so we hope to help them in that regard as well. And on the next slide, we also just received a large grant, a $1.2 million grant from the U.S. Economic Development Administration to help increase diverse founders entrepreneurship among diverse founders, so women and people of color, et cetera. As you may know, less than 2% of venture capital funding goes to women and people of color. And we're aiming, among others, we're aiming to try to help change that significantly. And so we have a three-part approach. First is providing access, capital itself. So we'll invest in their companies through the traditional impact investment arm that we've been doing. And we'll be launching a diverse founders fund here shortly. So increasing access to capital, number one, you see on the bottom left there. Number two then is technical assistance and providing consulting and training around key issues that typically constrain entrepreneurs' growth. And then the third is networking and helping broaden their networks and get them into additional networks that will facilitate their growth. So look for more information on that as that gets up and running. Very excited about that. Next slide, not explicitly related to diversity, but will help a lot. We've recently, this is last week actually, partnered with Paul Ryan's new foundation. Paul Ryan, the former Speaker of the House, has started a foundation called the America Idea Foundation. And among other things, their aim is to improve government effectiveness and accountability. Government spends about $1 trillion a year on social services in various forms, and less than 2% of that is measured in terms of its effectiveness, so the outcomes. And so we are creating a national data warehouse, pulling together all of the government data sets, cleaning them up, making them interoperable, et cetera, making it much easier to do evaluation work to improve the outcome of government data. And obviously a lot of that goes into low income areas, communities that are traditionally overlooked, et cetera. And so we aim to help that. Thanks, Taylor.
Yeah, Jeff, I don't think we mentioned this morning to the group, but we're also involved in a rather large scale infrastructure project with you. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Oh yeah, that. We're also in the process. We've learned from Lassonde, and we're in the process of building a similar building that will provide housing for both, we anticipate, freshmen and upperclassmen, and provide a center space for our center and a partner center, a sister center, which was just, or is in process of being announced, I guess, in process of being formed now, the Business Health and Prosperity Center. So provide office space for student work, and then student dorms above that. We're talking between 600 and 800, maybe even 1,000 beds. We'll see how it all plays out, but could be quite significant.
Yeah, so this is we'll have probably a more formal announcement in March, and we'll show you designs. But this will be another building managed by the business school. And again, I want you to. The reason I mention this is we think about our strategy going forward and whether it works. We're making investments in experiences that are different. It's combining academics, and it's combining living, and we're trying to kind of bundle things that have been unbundled. You don't live downtown, you want to live on campus because you're doing so much with your passion while you're here. And I think I want your insights into that, because that has been what we're trying to do. You see it with Lassonde. Curtis is doing it with Collart. We want to do it with impact investing and business health and prosperity. And, this becomes part of who we are. It's really a different learning by doing environment that we can point to these large infrastructure projects that make us very different than other schools. So thanks.
Taylor, I know you're going to go through this a bit later, but we all collectively think that this combination of theory, living, and action is what will differentiate, at least one track of differentiating education as it goes into the future. So we're following Taylor along that path.
Yeah, but I don't want to make that investment if you don't think it's going to work. We're still in the draw. We still have just pencils right now, so it's easier to retract.
We got the student surveys back that are excited.
Yeah. Okay. Any comments on that? All right, we're going to shift quick. Yeah, go ahead. What's that?
I said brilliant.
I don't know if it's brilliant. It has to work before I declare anything brilliant, Barbara. It has to work. Okay, the final thing we want to cover before a break is I want to talk to you a little bit about how we've been dealing with COVID. I mentioned earlier in our just the financial review that we have done well financially, but I think there are other aspects to how we've managed COVID that are important. We have done a lot with community, and I'm going to have Adam Looney hop on here and describe what we have been doing in the state. We are actively helping the state strategy to manage the economy and COVID at the same time. Some of you may have tuned in early on to the webinar series we did that was sponsored by the George S. and Dolores Story Eccles Foundation. We had over 18,000 viewers, and was hosted by Mike Leavitt, the former governor and Health and Human Services Secretary of the US. Those are very popular. Coming out of that, we received a $10 million grant from the state of Utah to actually do focused, I would say, scientific testing that would help us make economic and health-related decisions. And Adam Looney is our executive director of the Mariner Eccles Institute. I'd like to welcome him to talk about that project and what he's learned.
Thank you very much, Taylor. So it's very good to be here. I am as he said, the director of the executive director of the Mariner S. Eccles Institute. I was visiting here last year from the Brookings Institution. I'm very pleased to be staying here, and so pleased with the business school that my youngest brother is now a student. So we are all in on the School of Business. So in the early days of COVID-19 in Utah, we were asked by the governor's office to answer some basic questions about the spread of the disease, things like how far it had spread in Utah, what factors were associated with contracting the disease or spreading it to others. Questions that I think none of us really had any idea about how to solve at that time last April. But what we did know was that we had a very good faculty and medical center and a national reference laboratory. So we had a pretty good talent pool from which to design a study and implement it quickly. And so as Taylor said, we got a grant from through the state from CARES Act funding. Within about 10 days after getting the green light from that grant, we had field workers in the field recruiting participants to be tested and showing up at our mobile testing center to be tested. And those households were tested with venous blood samples and the NP swabs by medical faculty from the medical professionals through the hospital. It was, I think, one of the first and largest randomized representative surveillance projects in the US. Thus far, we've tested upwards of 15,000 people across Utah, and the numbers are rising. We test about 3 times a week now. And in addition to the faculty and medical professionals from the medical school, AREP labs, and the School of Business, we also rely heavily on students recruited through the Hope Course, which you'll hear about in a second. And the results, I think, have been useful. I think, there's evidence from the medical community that has been of interest and about how the testing works, the tests themselves perform. But we've generated a lot of evidence, I think, for the state. We found that the prevalence rate in Utah is very low, lower than, for instance, estimated by the CDC or based on other sources. Stanford had a study that suggested the prevalence rate was higher than we did, and I think we got it right. It suggests that the UDOH, the Department of Health, and the state are pretty effective at detecting cases. So we have a kind of a very good access to testing in Utah because of our medical community and medical centers. And so we catch a lot of those cases. We've been able to identify areas and populations with high prevalence. So for instance, the Hispanic communities on the west side of Salt Lake City households where they predominantly speak Spanish at home have much higher rates of COVID-19 than does the average household. And that's allowed, I think, to provide more resources to those hotspots and try to get the disease under control there. Also identified very low rates of household transmission. When we do our testing, we survey the entire household and test all of them. And what we found is that, if one person in a household is seropositive, it has had it in the past, a surprisingly low fraction of other people in the households have it. So only 12%, which suggests that, clearly there are some episodes that create mass spreading, but on average, the likelihood of passing it on to someone else is actually quite low. And our work is continuing. So, since we launched, we've been asked to address other questions raised by the state to understand, for instance, the extent to which people can social distance, wear masks, et cetera, when they're working or at home, and then how that relates to whether they're COVID positive. And we're embarking on some new projects that look at how transmission has changed how prevalence has changed over time, and also how it transmits within schools and within the school-age population. And so, I think we're effective in feeding that information to the state. I think we've organized through the Mariner Eccles Institute and the business school, like a good group of scholars and experts to address this. And we're trying to roll it out so that it can be useful to policymakers who are trying to get the economic recovery back on track. Thank you.
So I'm going to give you an example. I sit on one of those policymaking boards. I'll give you an example of how this data gets used. And then Adam, I want you to give a brief overview of the current study you just finished on COVID case levels in different states and mobility, or people's, I guess, shopping patterns is one way you could look at it. So that estimate of 10%, roughly 10%, 12%, 10% of who, when you're in contact with someone who's COVID positive, has really an interesting effect on when you analyze whether we're quarantining too much or not. And as you know, those of you that have quarantine issues in your businesses, it knocks somebody out for quite a while. That quarantining actually even gets worse in schools, when sometimes school level indicators can actually quarantine up to 30 or 50 people. We had a staff member here that was quarantined, and there were 50 people in that single quarantine. So Adam and his group pointed out correctly that it's actually not the probability that that quarantined person catches COVID that you're interested in. It's actually the probability that they actually transmit it. And so then your probabilities become multiplicative. And so the dialogue goes like this: well, if I have a 10% chance of catching it because I was directly, what's my probability of passing on? It turns out that's 1%. And after 7 days, it drops to 0.25%. And so the question is, are you actually taking people out of the economy for too long a period of time? And in fact, you will see shortly in the state of Utah that there will be a Get Back to School Early program, which says after 7 days, if you get a test, you can go back. So they're going to start cutting those quarantining periods down, because at the school level, the percent of people that are actually catching it that have been exposed is 1%. So now you're at 1/100%, even the day you get quarantined, that you'll actually pass it on to someone else. So there's a simple example of kind of how this is playing out in policymakers' minds. Love to hear, though, Adam, your latest results. If you feed them to us in like a minute. This is not going to do justice to a great paper, by the way.
Well, I mean, I think the one extension that we've done is, well, the evidence suggests that a lot of the economic damage associated with COVID-19 is not so much about about government shutdowns or government policy. It's that people read about cases, they read about fatalities in their own community, and they elect to not go to restaurants and not go on vacation. And so the kind of economic damage, I think the first result of that literature to which we're contributing is that a lot of the problems are about people's perceptions of the health consequences. And so I think it motivates a an effort both to address the health consequences of COVID as an economic strategy, and also a strategy to try and identify cases where you can identify safe practices that allow people to get back to work. And so part of our work is to examine how that those endogenous self quarantining or social distancing activity occurs, and then how it varies across states. And it turns out that it varies a lot across states based on the characteristics of the population. That in areas, certain areas, I think, react very strongly to local case counts. And so, for instance, when positive test rates spike or case counts spike, the population rapidly social distances, even without the governor saying anything. And in those states, the disease prevalence falls quickly. But that's not uniform across states. And in some states, they're basically resistant to hearing that message, and they elect not to social distance. And so that actually exacerbates the problems in those areas by kind of allowing the disease to remain at a high level. And so I think part of our next step is to identify ways to encourage people to take it more seriously in some of those areas, because it seems like that will help reduce the prevalence of the disease, and then get people back to work and back shopping more safely.
Any questions? Any questions for Adam? He's doing great work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Our last topic before our break is the Hope Corps. And I'll let Ruchi Watson talk about this. By the way, Ruchi is stepping out of the dean's office and into an incredible role. She's going to be the executive director of the Goff Strategic Leadership Center, so developing leaders here in our school. And this center stepped up this summer to try to provide a way for people that were our students who were displaced from summer work, some opportunities. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Thanks, Taylor. And thanks. Good to see everybody. Yeah, when we talk about strategic leadership and the Goff Center, it's not just about leading the things that kind of come to you, but it's about seeking out opportunities where you can provide value. And this is certainly one of those opportunities. So as Taylor mentioned, in the spring when COVID really hit, we had a couple weeks to get over 500 classes online. But that wasn't the only change for our students. Another one is that many of them lost out on their job opportunities, their internship opportunities, which not only impacted their experiences for their careers and things on their resumes, but certainly also the funding that many of them were expecting to receive over the summer. So seeing that need, and then also seeing a need in our community where small businesses and nonprofits and some particularly disadvantaged communities were being particularly impacted, we thought, what if we can bring those two needs together? And so that's exactly what we did via the Hope Corps. So we brought students together to basically assist and lift the small businesses, nonprofits, and people of Utah. So what does that mean? We had about 250 students that, due to some generous donations, were able to be in paid internship positions, and both proactively outreached to do things like help with the HERO project that Adam just talked about. So we had about 80 students helping on that testing project. We had 40 more students helping test incoming students that were coming into our housing on campus. We had students reach out to over 2,000 women and minority-owned small businesses to see if they were eligible for PPP loans. We also had outreached some of the communities where maybe they heard of resources and support, but may not trust some of that resources and support. So we were able to connect with some key partners like the Utah Black Chamber, the Swazo Business Center, the Pacific Islander Knowledge to Action Group, and several of the other of the community organizations that helped us really connect to the people in need. And finally, we also took in organizations that needed our help and proactively outreached us. And so my favorite is a small company called Brownies, who sold brownies and was not getting the foot traffic that they were used to getting. And so our students helped them pivot their business to an online and delivery service and help them with their marketing efforts. And they've been doing extremely well. So it really was kind of a win-win-win for the students, for the school, for the community. And now there are still over 100 students that are participating in this program, receiving scholarships and wages that are helping with the community. So it was a really great opportunity for our students to step up. And I think the positive unintended consequences is that it also, just from a mental and emotional standpoint, a lot of the students mentioned it felt really good to be able to do something positive during a time when they were really not feeling so great. And so it helped carry them through until they could get back to the fall and get back to classes.
Yeah, I can't tell you how both Career Services and the Goff Strategic Leadership Center just stepped up. They suddenly became consultants to small businesses, and students had a great experience. Brownies, 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 just to put a emphasis on it, was going under. And somebody had the great idea when the George Floyd incident occurred to invite all of the Black-owned food trucks to park in the Brownies, Brownies, Brownies parking lot. And I drove by one night and there were 400 people getting food and brownies. And I would guess that that single night saved that company, is all I can say. So it was a good piece of work by our students. It was fun to see. They're great brownies, by the way. We should send some to you all. Any questions about that? So I guess we tell you these stories because I think I was just really proud of our school. I think everybody saw this issue and they said, we can make something of this. And 250 students that wouldn't have had jobs suddenly had jobs, and companies that wouldn't have, would have gone under suddenly had 400 clients out in front of their house for a night, right? And that was inspiring. So through all this, I think we look at those moments and say, you know what, this place can really do some great things. All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then I need your energy. So if you got to go get some caffeine, go get it, because we're going to walk through some serious problems that we have right now, and I need you all. So anyway, we'll be back in 5. Barbara, how are you doing? Where are you in the world? You're muted. I'm trying to read your lips. Still muted.
Hi, just had surgery, had my hip replaced.
Oh, are
You're
you doing
such
okay?
a trooper.
Oh my gosh.
I'm here.
Thank you.
So Barbara, whose hip did you put in? That's the most important question.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm ready, Taylor.
This is a striker employee. All right, you're ready to go. All right, perfect. Amy, we're ready to go. For those of you, by the way, we had our accreditation meeting on Monday. I think we passed. We'll find out soon. But thanks for those of you that helped and were on the call. They gave us a lot of kudos for our entrepreneurship program. Told us we needed to talk a lot more about that. All right, so I'm going to set this up really quick. We were going to do some breakout rooms, but I think we'll just all stay together. And I'm going to turn it over to Andrea to deliver, I don't know what kind of news you want to call this, Andrea. You can just call it news, but it's not the greatest news.
We'll just call it real. We're just going to tell you real what's happening right now. So we had what started off to be a really encouraging recruiting season last year. We were on.
Andrea, can I break in? By
Sorry?
the way, I'm going to break in. I forgot to set this up.
Okay.
We are seeing transitions to online learning that are very successful at the graduate level, not so at the undergraduate level. And so I'm actually not right now overly worried about the graduate stuff that's going on, but I am really worried about the undergraduate.
Okay, thanks, Taylor. So we had a really awesome start to a recruiting season. And going into the pandemic, we were about 100 over what when in business scholars, what we saw last year. And we actually had capacity for an additional 100. So we were tracking it around 560, 575, looking to get in the 600s. And then COVID hit. And over the course of the summer, as students were getting announcements such as no football, no muss, a lot of classes are going to be online, and they were experiencing the difficulty of transitioning to online, we ended up now going in the wrong direction, and we've ended up with 469, which is a smaller cohort than we had last year. And one of the reasons we think for that was the uncertainty, and we were learning as we go. So it was very difficult to communicate, this is exactly what your experience is going to look like. But it just reinforced what we've known for a while. Undergraduates and freshmen especially make decisions based on the experience, not just the education. And our ability to deliver the experience has been, it's tough. We've worked really hard to give some in-person experience, but now what we're seeing is a lot of students, even if they do have a place in an in-person class, they're just taking it online because it's easier. They don't really have to get out of bed. And then they're getting quarantined sometimes where they have to be 2 weeks in one room without being able to get out of that room. So it's been extremely challenging. And we're kicking off our new recruiting year with a much different approach, just trying to be optimistic about what's happening. But I think what it's done is, on the good side, it's reinforced the power of the experiences that we deliver at the Eccles School and with the Business Scholars Program. The challenge that we want to talk to you about is how to build the value proposition and provide the benefits when the pandemic is giving us a lot of challenges in being able to give them the experience that we've recruited them in for. So we hope that it's a short-term issue that will go away as the pandemic goes away, but we're hearing that the pandemic is maybe not going away. It's actually influencing and changing things for good, and that there's going to be a lot more things happening digitally and virtually, and we want to make sure that it doesn't diminish our value proposition at all. So hopefully that's a decent setup to, there's just a lot of uncertainty that we want to be prepared for, and we want your impact or your input into helping us think through it.
But the statement here says that they don't want to pay for the current experience. I guess I'm hearing something that's slightly different. Part of it is, which is they don't, I don't know, they want to fully participate, or they deferred because the experience wasn't going to be there. I don't know. It sounded just a little bit different than this.
Yeah. Two things happening there. So one part of it is the business school is premium versus most of the rest of the university. And so it's important that they see the benefits. We do have benefits in our experiential programs, in our job placement, in our salaries. But as we've not been able to deliver the experience, we are getting lots of calls about them not wanting to, they want tuition rebates, and they are very much more price conscious because of our inability to deliver the level of experience that we are used to.
So let me give you just a couple other pieces of information, and then I think a number of you were asked to lead these discussion questions. Sean, you're the first one, so I'll turn the time over to you to ask the question and maybe lead us in discussion. So we charge $13,000 a year at our business school, and on average, people get a 20% scholarship. So that takes it down to just under $10,000. The rest of the university list price is $8,000. Is that right? $8,850. Compared to those of you that know UVU, they're in the $6,000 range. Utah State is about $8,000 in their business school, $8,000 or $9,000. So that's the local market. Those numbers are still better than in-state in California. So we're doing well with out-of-state. It's really an in-state group. And then I think the final relevant piece of information is that my guess is, my horizon that I've got in my head is we don't get vaccines widely distributed until November next year, optimistically. So we've got another recruiting cycle to walk through like this. And I got a building I might want to build. There's a lot of things that we kind of have riding on this experience model. So with that, Sean.
So I think our team that we'll just talk as a group had the first question, right? Which is, what are the most likely shifts in the economic model in higher education, both in the short term and the long term?
So I have some thoughts on this, and I have 2 boys in the program, and so and they have friends, and so they're in and out of our house, and so it's a small sampling, but nonetheless, it's a very real one because I hear them talk. So there was when they're not in the classroom, when they're not in the buildings, when they're not able to go do the things that you all do in the overall program, they don't seem to have the draw to the program. If the program's just on a virtual screen, it just doesn't seem to hold their attention or get them motivated. I think the second piece of that is, you can have a great professor who does great in a live discussion in a classroom. They may be awful as an online teacher. And so as I've listened to some of the classes, you can have really good professors and teachers think they're teaching, but I don't think they are teaching. And it's sometimes they're talking so fast that they can't write down. Now, in defense of the professor, you can't see eyes, you can't see people nodding or confused. And then when the teacher asks questions, all the students sit really quiet. No one asks a word. Or they'll put up a slide with a ton of rich content and then talk really fast over it. So the professor may realize that they're not, or needs to realize, there may not be transferring information in a way that's adaptable on these online tools. So I think it's the 2 things. They're missing the buildings, the excitement, that feel when you go into the Eccles school. It's just so special. Now they're sitting at home and they're on a little teeny screen for hours with a professor talking fast with content coming at them, and they can't digest it. So they're like, well, this is no fun. And so then they're all talking about it. I can just tell you, they're all talking about it. But the magic of Eccles is you're in those really cool facilities with really cool professors face to face. So I think you're going to have to rethink, how do you present the value of this program on an online experience, and rethink and reimagine how to teach more effectively over an IS tool. That's my thoughts as a parent.
Thanks. This is what we want to hear.
I think I have one college child, and she's not at the U. She's at CU Boulder. Well, she's in my basement this semester, but as we talked about. But so she's doing this, online. They called it like flex or hybrid or something, but essentially there are Zoom classes that she's attending, and some study groups and things like that. And I agree with everything I think that Mark said, that it seemed, and she had some of that last spring, which I think a lot of kids that were in college had that last spring too. They closed campuses and sent them home, and they did the same thing. And I would say it's already improved, the good news, from what was offered, I think, last spring, or what her experience was in that virtual environment, because things do improve. So I think that's one of the shifts, is I think the teaching just has to get better. The delivery has to get better. And I believe it will. I believe this will drive to that. But I don't think that it will ever be truly equal to the benefits of in-person, cohort learning, and some of the access, I guess I would say, to their professors, or, hanging after class with some folks, or whatever those things are. And so I think there's a lot of yearning to, whatever the future version looks like. And I think while next fall is uncertain, it will be different than this fall in some form or fashion. We will have either gotten better at some of those things. We'll have found ways perhaps to have more in-person that's safe, or certain types of things. And so I think it'll be different than we experienced this fall. And I also think that, and it's hard to predict, but I think it will be different in terms of the students you're recruiting, because they've now had some pandemic experience, good or bad, learning-wise, good or bad. And I think however that shapes up, I just think that outcome will be different, versus as we were pushed into this situation, nobody really had much of this virtual learning experience, I think prior to that. And I'd share one other thing really quick, is just the parents group that I'm in. I'm in a big parents group on social media with the CU crowd. And it's been interesting. There's a lot of threads around, they want rebates, they want refunds because their kids aren't getting any in-person. They've suspended all in-person learning at this point. And I hear all that and I see that, but yet I still think all those kids want to go back to some kind of experience. You don't want to end that experience, I guess, permanently. And I think I just kind of wonder about will this change to where it will be more of some kind of hybrid, because there is flexibility in virtual and online. Potentially there could be some cost savings and lower options available, but does this change it more where the students of the future want to have more of a hybrid and more virtual options available than we've had in the past?
So I just have a quick question, and that is, are we looking at the benefit of having more online learning available? When you look at the availability of special guest speakers, special business people who would cost a fortune to bring in otherwise, now it's not only more affordable, those people are more accessible, they're more willing to get on to an hour Zoom call. And maybe if there's some exclusivity that was offered in partnering with titans in business, from across the country or the world, even whatever, that we could partner with, then that offers this exclusivity in this program that wouldn't otherwise be affordable for us or accessible.
Interesting idea. Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow we got to come up with ideas to make it more special.
I mean, I throw this name out there because it's like somebody, like if you could get Bill Gates or Warren Buffett or somebody who's the special guest speaker, you could partner and put together a program where there's exclusivity in these titans of business. Then the program suddenly has a little bit more cachet, has a little bit more of an offering that they wouldn't necessarily get if everything was in person.
One question I've got, and you may already be pushing here, but just reflecting on some of my college kids' experiences and even me, I'm in Chicago today. I've been at Northwestern in their medical center, and it's bustling with people. I mean, everyone's spread out, everyone's got masks, everything's being taken care of, but I don't know if the campus is completely dark or if there are ways that you can still create energy, because I think we've learned a lot. I mean, you can go to the airport, you can fly, most of that at this point, I think people understand is quite safe. The safety is quite high. It's, without there being any reason to be on campus, you really just kind of lose that energy. And, it's usually, at least my experience has been that it's not the classes. Like if you're in a hybrid model and you can get people in classes, that's not the high risk environment. It's usually the stuff that's happening like in someone's, dorm at night or, parties or whatever that none of us can control. It's totally out of our control. But are we utilizing the campus as much as possible in small group ways, whether it's, I don't know, I don't know how far you've pushed that, because there's still, it's still right there. And a lot of parts of the economy have figured out how to kind of create that and get back to some semblance of normalcy.
Yeah, I'm going to let Andrea, she's done some great experimenting. I'll tell you a couple experiences, I've had and what I'm managing. So one is I've got 40% of my faculty that are probably in the high risk category. And so that takes your capacity out really quick. And then the second is that our campus, even for next spring, is telling us to plan for only 25% in person. And what I think is happening is when a student has one, they all want to be here, that's what they're saying. But when they have one class a day on campus, the transaction cost in the morning of getting out of bed is too high. And so literally I'll walk into rooms now where they're supposed to be in person, and we also have to provide a video access to those classes, and there will be 2 people in a classroom. And so that just is getting tough. And so one thing we would have to do is push the university and say, look, we're going to lose out on students. And then fortunately, I do have faculty that are willing to teach in person because we don't think much is going on spread-wise in the classroom. So we could do that. But Andrea, you've been experimenting. You're doing one right now. You may
Yes,
be
actually today. So Steve, I totally hear your point, and I think I can distill it down to risk and risk appetite and who's got what risk appetite. So students have a much higher appetite for risk. They're young, they're not as worried, and the penalties of them getting sick aren't as great per the statistics. The university is extremely concerned about a bad PR experience, and I think their risk assessment, especially based on having the health side of the equation with an equal voice to the academic side, their risk level is pretty high. One of the things that I'm sure your kids in college will tell you is about the worst thing that can happen to them short of getting COVID is getting quarantined for knowing somebody who's had COVID. And the quarantining protocols, it's like 14 days in a room, no talking to anybody, no getting out and getting food when you want it. Somebody has to deliver it to you. And so that part of the experience, I think, has the opportunity to be really thought through. And we're learning a lot every day about it. And so I think that for both faculty and students, the quarantining piece of it is a factor to think about. We've done two things. One, we've got Eccles engagements, and I think many of you have either participated or seen outreach. Taylor was golfing with some students a couple weeks ago. So these are both virtual and in-person experiences that any...
Golf with students is not a very scalable activity. I'm just
that one isn't. I'll tell you about the scalable one we're doing today. But anyway, having alumni come in and faculty and staff, and having an opportunity for students to get some one-on-one time, whether it's virtual or in person. And we've been blessed by great weather this fall and lots of outdoor spaces to do these things. It's going to get harder in the next couple of months. We've got 90 kids up at Midway, where I'm at the homestead today, sitting in a room while they're all golfing, horseback riding, ATV riding, mountain biking. But in order to get them up here, Taylor took an incredible political risk by just going and saying, we've got to get these kids out there. And we gave them all testing. We got the testing results. They had to be negative. And then we had to take what was going to be an overnight thing and just limit it to one full day, and then limit it. It's mostly all outdoors. But they are so grateful to be here. And so the nice thing is, the very first week, we're doing it 3 weeks in a row because we're doing it with a third of the students. And the very first week, senior administration was very nervous, and you could tell they wanted to shut us down at the least issue. This week, since last week went well, this week they said, we're really rooting for you because we want this to be a model for being able to start opening up in the spring and for other groups to be able to do it. So I think it is a risk conversation, and we are making progress on it, but we have to do a whole lot more, to your point, Steve, because that's really what our students are needing right now.
And by the way, we have 35 free rooms available tonight at the homestead, since we can't stay. If any of you would like a room, please contact Teresa at teresa.nelson@eccles.utah.edu.
Stephen, you raised a really important thing. When my kids walk across the campus, they said it's just dead. Yet I'm looking at the CDC infection fatality ratios, and for a 19-year-old, it's 0.00003%. Yet we've shut down a 40,000 person campus. And even when you look at the 50 to 69, it's still 0.005%. So we've become a very risk averse nation about this. And by the way, I'm a mask wearer, I'm in the medical world and want to do this right. But at some point we've overclubbed this thing. And it's going to take a toll on universities. It's going to take a toll on students. It's taking a toll on companies. But when I look at these ratios, which are equal to the flu, so at some point, though, if the students are at low risk and the professors are at higher risk, shouldn't we be flipping this? If I can fly on an airplane and have a seat next to me that's empty, why can't students sit 3 or 4 seats apart? And maybe there's more protections we provide to the professor, but allow the students to gather to have that experience. So I think we need to flip this. I think we've designed around those that are high risk, and we impose the high risk onto the low risk equally. And I think that's where I think we make some mistakes in our judgment.
Mark, I think when you get back to the issue here of just the economic model, though, this is where what I think was already happening is, and it's particularly interesting if you read some of those articles sent out in the pre-read, and I'm sure you've all kind of heard about some of this just in the news, but I think the trend was already there, that there was a lot of pressure on, are we really getting the value for our money in a 4-year degree? This is accelerating that.
Yeah,
it's
I agree.
not going to go away.
You're already thinking, you're already asking the question. Now it's like, it's fuel to the fire. I agree.
Yeah, fuel to the fire. And on top of that, when we talk hybrid, we're not talking about something that's on sometimes and sometimes virtual. We're talking about simultaneously doing the same. And to me, the experience you're getting, having facilitated a number of training courses myself now trying to do that, is you're getting the worst of both. Because you have a teacher teaching to the screen or to the class, and you have to teach two different ways, just as we were talking about improving teaching. Those are not the same teaching styles. So both are getting the worst.
Yeah.
And so that value proposition goes way down, even if it's not about campus, even just education.
Right. And by the way, the students make it hard on themselves. They're looking at their phones, they're texting. You know, there's so many other distractions around looking at an 8-inch screen. Everybody loses. The professor loses, the students lose. So there's got to be a better way. What we're doing now is not sustainable and is not going to work. That's my advice.
Chris, you're spending time in our classroom for us. What are your observations thus far? Chris is teaching for us this semester.
Yeah, I'm helping with that profiles in leadership class. So I'm live with a set of about, 17 or 20 students. And it has been interesting because we've had a week over week kind of drop off because somebody does get diagnosed in a household. And so then that student is quarantining and staying at home. And it's definitely a challenge. Today, Al led the entire group online. So this is a group of about 70-something students. And we both agreed that, it worked generally, but it doesn't, I actually did have some concern that we would see more drop off from these students after we do 2 weeks of sort of enforced online only in order to provide this break that the university is trying to provide and hold down infections. I was initially thinking, I wonder if we'll see a bigger drop-off rate, like more people will just decide, at the end of the day, it's the get out of bed equation, and maybe it's just easier to do the whole thing at home. But I do, I'll be really interested to see, because it definitely works better having a live environment. And this is a particular class where it's very much the discussion of the group. Taylor and Al have led this class for a long time, and it's all about evaluating and discussing what's going on in the world from a business leadership aspect. And based on our experience this morning, I believe and I hope that these students will continue to really want some in-person instruction. And I think that in general, we've all felt pretty safe. And I'm one of the cautious ones because of some pre-existing stuff that makes me more vulnerable. But between, new buildings with great HVAC, mask wearing, and a really, a socially distanced environment in the class, like we saw when Troy showed us that picture. I think in general, what I hear from the students and what I feel is we're all feeling pretty safe. So I think, some of these experiments that you are running, Taylor, in having some in-person, hopefully it will lead to us being able to do a little bit more of that. Particularly, I'm hearkening back to our what we were talking about just before the break, which is the studies that we've done and may publish that may be helpful in getting more realistic about what we need to do and where we can strike that balance that maybe doesn't need to be so much on one side right now. I would just add one more thing, though, that Anne's comments earlier, I think what I got from some of that pre-reading and even hearkening back to the financial meltdown of 07-08, student debt was becoming a bigger and bigger topic about American household debt. And of course, now we know it supersedes credit card debt. as a society. And we're seeing more and more of that, I think, in the current media about the people who are having hard times, and you know, they're carrying so much debt. So I think this trend in really questioning, are we getting what we need to for that amount of debt, and how do we adjust things so that education continues to be a positive contribution overall to the economy instead of a drag. So
yeah.
You know, Taylor, I have another thing that I would just like to bring up, and maybe this is because I'm living on Zoom, you know, in my personal work life, and I think a lot of people are too. But it's been really interesting to see people who really do a good job. And so going to Mark's comments, I do think there's a lot that can be done to really enhance the Zoom experience, just having been in a lot of meetings. Like just today, we had a consultant lead a session with my team in London, and it was super interesting because they use so many other aspects of Zoom. Like, I don't know if you guys know, but on options, you can go up and you can hit options, you hit annotate, and then you can start asking, and you pick a stamp, and then you can like ask people, like I can just like put a heart on the screen there, and you can vote and things like that on Zoom. You can quickly pull people in and out into breakout sessions and then come back in and have them working on Google Sheets. And I was watching this consultant, it was just like, he used so many more really cool aspects of Zoom that kept a 3-hour meeting. Like we didn't even have a break. It was so interesting and exciting. And I'm thinking you can make it better by really educating the professors on how to actually do this online with people that really know what they're doing. And then the second thing, I'm wondering if with the way that you said that the online MBA, for example, is doing better, like if we're not going to be able to go hybrid and make that work because the kids don't want to get out of bed and stuff, I think that we need to think maybe this gets to the economic side of it, but truly going in an online, but making it really worthwhile, less money, and then you save it saying, hey, this is for now. When you get back, you know, we're going to do something different. But I actually do think you can make it better online for now, but it takes a little bit of, you know, just exploring around with different ways to leverage Zoom, and they're going to have to get trained on it. How do you break people into a Zoom meeting or a breakout session and get more people talking? Because part of it is just the engagement aspect of it, you know?
Yeah.
Right. And I'll echo what Paige said. I've been on some Zoom meetings that are they're interactive enough that you have to pay attention. You know, you can't not listen. We're put into smaller groups, quite small groups. And then somebody's poking into the small group to say, have you got any good ideas yet? I'll share them with everyone. And so you can't just sit there and lollygag around. So it makes it more interactive, even though we're online. And another question I've got is, so are the professors doing any teaching on a big screen so that the students then can be in the classroom?
We do have, you know, that capability. It was one of the interesting things that we've tried, and again, this is just a complete work in process. We're just not there, but you know, campus announced that they had $100,000 to put into technology grants for classrooms, and I'm thinking, you've got to be kidding. We actually, those of you that are watching your kids' classes, we actually spent $600,000 on our classrooms alone to try and, you know, put the best available in there and to try to get faculty, you know, moving. The fact of the matter is, if you look at, and this was brought up this morning, there's a professor at Harvard. I'd recommend you go look. He's on YouTube. His name's David Malin. He's the most popular professor at Harvard, but he has literally a production studio. He does a computing class, and it actually gets piped into Yale, and it's the most popular class at Yale as well. But I mean, he's spending, I don't know, $50,000 a class to put this on. It's incredible, right? He's great. You feel like you're watching Oprah, and it's fantastic. That's an expensive proposition. but we've got to do something. We got to do something different.
The topic that you teach differently if you're really doing it online than just sticking the computer in front of you. So now you've got the question of, am I teaching some classes wholly in one way and that same class is delivered by somebody else in a different way? I just add on to the comments that Paige made there by saying, if you get to that question too about, you know, how does Eccles win? You highlighted already that the strategy is founded in this experiential learning. And I know we can't do the same experiences that we've already done, but to me, the winning is thinking about how to make new experiences or different experiences. Maybe you try to solicit a lot more, like one of the people said earlier today, a lot more people to attend the university, but they never come on campus. So how are their local or geographical or regional experiences that are still superior to what other schools would offer in a classroom? Whether that's with businesses or it's with internships or not-for-profits, I don't know what it is. Or maybe it's even like, you know, elementary school kids who are the really best teachers right now are asking them to leave and go in the kitchen and learn fractions by cooking something. You know, how is it that we create something that's, you know, analogous in a much more sophisticated way to experiential?
Yeah.
One other comment, just to hit the economic question head on, and I'm seeing this in a number of different companies, is has the cost to deliver, you know, the education changed at all? Has COVID affected that? Because a lot of companies have had to figure out, because they've adapted, you know, they're going through and looking at every single cost. Because that's what stood out to me as I looked at those reports and things, is the cost growth is like astronomical. I mean, it's insane. And unless by switching and adapting, there are opportunities to actually unlock some cost savings and actually change the direction, the trajectory of that cost line. I don't know how you ultimately address this. I mean, you either address the cost side or you know, get them bigger salaries on the way out. Otherwise, the relationship is, you know, it's doomed.
So I'll make a couple comments on that. And then I think Amy actually, Amy, why don't I let you, well, let me make a couple comments. So we do have a couple experiments going on right now. And I walked into a professor, and it's pretty easy math. You pay them $200,000 and they teach 200 students a year. You know what the cost is. So I went in, I said, I would love to pay you $500,000 this year if you will teach 1,000 students. And we will see how that comes out, right? And so we're going to try that and see, you know, kind of what happens. And if you can do that multiple times, then maybe you've got something scalable. I also think one of the, you know, the issues that is somewhat, I mean, it has to do with cost. It's a little bit endogenous, meaning what's the chicken, what's the egg. As state institutions have pulled back funding per student, costs have to go up, right? Even if just by taking away the subsidy, right? So if they're paying $10 a student and then they retract dollars and it's now they're only giving you $8 a student, your tuition has to compensate, just keeping costs similar. So not a lot of the cost increase is just our costs going up. It's actually states choosing not to subsidize higher education.
Yeah. And it really does have to be a fundamental rethinking of how the education is delivered, and whether by switching to more of a hybrid model or changing the gearing of what you just described, you can actually structurally change the cost structure of doing it.
So let me tell you where, and I'll just take an idea and then I want to go. So one of the ideas I want our faculty to tackle this year is how to give credit for experiences. So, right, you've got all this learning going on at Lassonde, and you'll do an exit interview with a student. They said, I didn't learn anything in class, but oh my gosh, I learned a lot at Lassonde. Well, that is an incredibly scalable experience because it's just a building that we put in, right? And they're teaching themselves. So why can't I figure out a way to give 500 students credit for that? And it's cheap, right? Because it's really just a fixed cost that's there. That's one idea. What do you think of that one? It also fits a little bit more with our mission.
Yeah, Taylor, I was actually thinking earlier, when you said earlier, we're teaching skill sets and not just delivering classes, right? And that's what students are looking for, or maybe they don't yet know that they're looking for that, but they are. And So that's what that reminded me of, is that idea of skill sets. So you're bringing up, how do you give credit for them? And then, you know, is that a possibility? I was struck in that pre-read or the video, I can't remember where we saw it, but the example that well, I guess it was speculation, MIT could offer a 2-year STEM certification, right? And might be really high value. And so I just started thinking about that with your emphasis on the action part, the doer part of the program, which is really these skill experiences.
Yeah. Amy, I'm sorry I didn't see your hand. If you're still there, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, I mean, going back to the economic impact, I think that it's not temporary. I think, I mean, I'm just going to be, you know me, I'm kind of open about it. What we're seeing at all the universities that I serve on the boards of is the enrollment rates are down. And I think it was kind of, there was already question going into COVID of, is the degree worth it? Like was mentioned, you know, and you were starting to see more and more companies drop the requirement for the 4-year degrees, like big companies, IBM, GE, Apple. And I think with COVID, you saw the government now drop their requirement for the 4-year degree. So you have this kind of a perfect storm of combination of, there's parents that frankly, because they're worried about their economic situation, that they're then saying, you know, I need my kid to pull out for a little while and not pay for that because the parents maybe can't afford it and the kid can't. But then you also have kids that are saying, you know, if I can't have the social impact of it, of the friendships, then maybe I'll just take a gap year. But stats are, I mean, at least in the research that I've looked at, it says less than 1 in 5 come back once they actually they drop out. Then they very rarely will they come back and finish. And so I think you're going to have, even when COVID, like let's say there's the vaccine comes out and everything, I think the shift that's happened here when those two things converged is going to be a permanent shift where the costs are going to have to come down and people are going to have to really innovate to make it worth it with things like what you're talking about, where you find a way to say, hey, it's still worth it to come here because partially we're going to be looking at what you actually do in life and you can test through based on your life experience, but still get your degree. So they're still willing to pay for the degree without necessarily having to do it the traditional way of sitting in these Zoom classes. The feedback from students that we've talked with across all the universities is they don't like it. I mean, they don't like the Zoom thing. It's hard for them to, they go in and just kind of chill, but it's really hard to feel engaged and like it's worth the value to them when they can just go sit and watch a master class or something on YouTube, right? So I think that it's going to be the universities that really expect it not to go back to being okay, that then figure out right now, while there's still the time, how are we going to pivot so that we take advantage of the technology in a way that it becomes like we're embracing it as the new normal, in a way that we're like getting really innovative right now with how we're going to address it, that kids will start to go, oh, maybe that school's worth going to. Because I think you're going to have some schools that do not, well, a lot of schools I don't think are going to survive, because the more that this goes on and the less the kids are having that kind of engaged experience, it's going to be harder to convince them it's worth coming back or finishing or not taking that time off. And we even have parents that have kids that are in these universities that they said, oh, I decided not to send them back. And part of it was because of the apartment rentals last year, right? Like parents had their kids in and then they had to finish paying for the whole year. So they're like, well, we're not going to take a risk of being locked into an annual contract when we don't know that you're going to be in the apartments. There's like this whole situation where it's not only the kids and questioning, but the parents are questioning, and then they're questioning together. And then you're kind of in an uphill battle there. So I think your universities like Western Governors was in an amazing situation, right? Because they were already skilled for this, whereas everybody else is having to kind of try to learn how to become skilled at it. And so it's the ones that will like really make an effort and get the faculty somehow engaged, because I think you got to get them excited about online as well, so that they want to make it more engaging for the students instead of thinking it as a temporary burden I have to do until this gets fixed. But I think you're going to have no choice but to look at cost differentials here, because I don't think it's going to return back to what it was no matter with COVID or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
There's the outward bound experience that you might consider, because of course they're giving, they give college credit for some of that stuff. And I don't know exactly how the whole thing works, but
yeah, you have real life experience
on a ropes course and teach them tenacity and trust and give them some credit, right?
If I was a product manager, and I don't know if the customers have been have had a survey instrument given to them. But I would guess if I was a product manager and I was running this through the Masters of Business Creation, I would say, okay, just listening to the conversations, what are the 3 things in order that they care about? This is just my guess. One would be socialize with other students. So there's a segment of value in that product you would build in where literally they just want to get together, not with the professors, but with each other. There's number 2, which is get ahead. And I think the degree from Google gives you that, which is why would I spend a bunch of time at school when I get opportunity? I think the golfing that you do with the students, they want to golf with the dean because, oh my gosh, I'm networking. So 2 is sort of I'm feeling important to get ahead. And then 3, and I probably would put it 3, it's painful for those on the other side to hear this, but it's learning, the teaching quality. And so if you stack those buyer purchase criteria from the customer, and then you sort of said, okay, what do I get on value for each of those components? And then what is the cost? My guess is a lot of the cost comes on number 3. And that is the one where you can flip it with, it's been mentioned, with awesome professors, with scaling up and saying, hey, I'll pay you $1 million if you can solve this problem with me. And then you can solve the others within your engineering constraints, which is socialize all you want when you're outdoors and I don't know what else. And then maybe when golf is over, you have to get your snowmobiling outfit on and you take every one of those students out to kind of meet number 2. But I think if you put those 3 purchase criteria in, and I bet if you ask the students from an academician's perspective, they would say it's all about learning and the teaching. Those other jobs, I think, of kind of getting together and then feeling special are really, really important to those students. And if you were redesigning this product, you might be able to make a more cost-effective product if you looked at those 3 things.
Agree 100% with what you just shared.
Thank you. Hey, we're reaching the end of our time. I just want to thank you all for joining us today. And we will send out a survey to see if you like this Zoom meeting. But thanks for listening to us and helping us solve problems. I've picked up some good ideas today. I'll turn it back over to you, Anne.
Nothing more to add other than it's just so great. We got so many people here participating. Thank you for bearing with us as we decided to skip our breakouts, but all of you stayed so engaged. We really appreciate it. So hope we get to see everyone, whether it's in person or on Zoom again in the spring. One thing I didn't mention up front is we've just kind of in the process of updating our bylaws decided to refresh our board on an annual basis so that we can do our orientation every summer. So that's why we have some people offboarding now. We'll have some offboarding in the spring, and then they'll be on that annual cycle. So hopefully that means we'll have an opportunity to see each other face to face in the spring, but stay tuned. We'll keep you posted.
By the way, Paige is moving to London. Is that not true? Or are you in London?
Oh, she's on mute.
I am moving as soon as I can, but I'm now I've been up since 3 today. So I'm working London because we're not in the office yet. But yeah, I got the job in June and I haven't been able to move yet. So I'm looking like maybe January, maybe March now. So I got to get the work visa and all that stuff. But yeah.
You're head of
an international member of the board.
Well, I'll be happy to help. As I was saying, when we actually are taking tours again, I can host the students at our offices in London. So, but yeah. Thank you.
We actually have about 150 students that we're hoping to bring to London the first week of May. So I'll be reaching out.
Yes, I'll be happy to do that.
We'll see if we can get there. So
I know that's the whole big if in life right now, right? So,
I totally agree.
Yeah. So.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Happy birthday, Taylor.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Yes.
Hey, I can sing my song if people want to stay on.
I'm staying on.
I'm all ears.
I'll stay on for that.
Stay for that.
Today is a birthday, I wonder for whom. I know it's for someone who's right on this Zoom. So look all around you for somebody who is happy and smiling. My goodness, it's you. Happy birthday, Taylor, from all of us to you. Happy birthday, Taylor, from Mommy and Daddy too. We congratulate you and pray good luck follows you. Happy birthday, Taylor. May all of your good dreams come true.
You know,
Hey, that was awesome.
and you know what? I felt like I was Miss Julie on Romper Room the whole time anyway. And here we are again. I see Paige and Matthew, and I see Chris.
Taylor. That's what your
And you know
teachers
what?
could do. They could say, I see all my students out there.
Yeah, and Al actually knows Miss Julie.
Are you doing anything fun for your birthday, Taylor?
You know what? I am leaving right now to go ride a gravel bike through Kodachrome Basin. So it'll be fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Fun.
So.
Awesome.
Have a good one, Taylor.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
See everybody.